¡No griten! Welcome back. Welcome back to Living in Mexico. I'm Ana Maria Salazar. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate all of you who've been joining us throughout the years. It's an honor to share with you information, news, analysis about what's going on in Mexico, both in English and in Spanish. So I really appreciate you joining us today, especially as we are all really trying to understand the magnitude of the this disaster in Acapulco due to Hurricane Otis. A very important consulting firm here in Mexico, Integralia, less than a week after Otis hit the coast of Guerrero, the coast of Acapulco, and some of the nearby municipalities, they actually published an extraordinary document trying to lay out the challenges that the city of Acapulco, the state of Guerrero, and even Mexico will be facing due to this tremendous natural disaster. Joining us today is Carlos Ramirez. You know him well. He's been joining us throughout the years. He is part of Integralia. Carlos, welcome to the show. Can you just lay out kind of the bullets that you and your colleagues present in this document? Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ana Maria. Thank you for having me again. Yes, we published this report early this week, in which basically what we try to convey to our clients, and actually the document is open for anyone who wants to take a look. Basically, we want to convey what is our perspective from a political risk analysis perspective. What is our view about this very unfortunate event in Acapulco? And there are several things that we mentioned there. Clearly, the economic consequences of the event. Basically, there has been a couple of independent estimates coming from different consultancy firms and from a rating agency, in which basically they state that the cost of the disaster will be in the order of 15 to 16 billion US dollars. What we say in the report is that this report was published, by the way, before the federal government announced their economic rescue plan, basically 5 billion rescue plan. But in the report, what we mention is that the government doesn't have money really to cover for the magnitude of this disaster. There has been a lot of discussion in Mexico about this topic because the federal government basically disappeared the natural disaster fund that was available in the last administration. So it has really not much money to spend on this. And so we raised that point. Second, we mentioned the political cost for President Lopez Obrador. We think that overall, the event, although there was a very slow response of the federal government, there was no previous advice and warning for most people in Acapulco that the hurricane was coming. Despite all this erratic, the government response, we don't think it will have a major political cost for President Lopez Obrador. He so far he has been able to use the same strategy than in other events during his administration, trying to show empathy, but by throwing a lot of money to the people. And I think that is going to help a lot to diminish or reduce the political cost of the event. Despite that, we mentioned that that remains to be seen, right? It is open. And finally, the third point we raised in the report, social cost. Guerrero is one of the poorest states in Mexico. Acapulco has close to 1 million inhabitants, 70% of which work in the informal sector. Most of them lived live daily on tourism. What's going to happen with them? There is no word on the rescue package on that, how they're going to save the jobs that currently are simply not operating because of the hotel overall destruction. So there are still a lot of questions open. What we raise here is the economic, the political, and the social costs, and what could come next, Ana Maria.
So before we talk, Carlos, and it is an extraordinary document, I highly recommend our audience to look at this document, and we will tweet it on my Twitter account, which is AM Salazar, or at Mexico Daily. And I know you have been tweeting it, Carlos, too. But the issue here, let's first talk about the political impact, which clearly President Manuel Lopez Obrador is worried about, since we do have presidential elections next year. Well, we have the largest elections in Mexico history next year. And then we can talk about the security impact. So let's start with the political impact.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is quite paradoxical. In the past, presidents in Mexico were very fast in response to natural disasters. And they were almost since day one in the place of the disaster. All the cabinet was basically devoted entirely for weeks or months to basically attend the disaster, earthquake or hurricane. And that in Mexican history granted the presidents quite, I mean, in a way, helped the presidents for their popularity. President Lopez Obrador has used a very different strategy on that. He never shows himself close to the event. He hasn't touched Acapulco. At least there's no photographs of him in Acapulco. It's been now almost 10 days. He has basically his morning conference press today, he touched Acapulco very slightly and then went to other themes. He wants to come back to, let's say, the normal situation before the hurricane. He uses a very different strategy, but it doesn't cost him politically. Although the evidence is there that the government reacted very slowly before and after the hurricane, Mexicans doesn't seem to really put a political cost to him. So he reacts exactly always in the same way. It's almost as if there was a booklet, Ana Maria, on how to respond to disasters in this administration. And so far, we have to wait a bit to see if there will be any effect on his popularity and clearly on the 2024 election. But so far, seems to me and seems to us that there hasn't been major cost for him.
Now, which is fascinating because he is the Teflon president. I mean, when they used to call President Reagan the Teflon president, if you recall, it just seems that Andrés Manuel López Obrador he can slip and slide and make mistakes. At least the way we view it, or at least how traditional politics works, and it still doesn't really hurt him. It's just a different way of doing politics. Let me ask you this then. So let's look at the security environment, the national security challenges that Mexico is going to face due to the impact of Hurricane Otis. I mean, we have to remind our audience, Guerrero continues to be a challenge regarding security, organized crime, social movements, paramilitary groups. I mean, it is, drug trafficking, people trafficking. I mean, it has been traditionally a state that suffers in the impact of organized crime and security in general. What is the sense that you all perceived as you were drafting this report will be the impact on security in that state, and not only that state, in Mexico in general?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Guerrero is one of the states in Mexico which has a very evident security problem. The situation has worsened during the past years. And now this. So what will the effect be? There's several potential consequences and derivatives of this, Ana Maria. One of them is this state, particularly Acapulco, extortion was everywhere, right? But now there's no more places to extort, at least in the short term. So what will the criminality do in order to replace what their regular income, sorry to say that as it was, if it was normal, clearly it is not, but illegal income? We are worried that this could lead to more criminality, certainly, but it will also lead to the criminality moving to other places to continue to extort and capture this illegal rents, right? And we are worried about Chilpancingo, Iguala, Cuernavaca, and border states where there could be some problems as a result. Then obviously we have the problem on how the organized crimes react to this event and how they try to use this unfortunate event to really raise social acceptance, right? By helping people and by increasing their visibility within the population. We are worried about that too. Obviously, we are worried about the security situation in general. The looting, the initial looting that happened there, there was simply no one to stop people, so that creates terrible incentives for the future. So yes, there are several consequences as a result of this event that could turn the situation, the security situation, even worse, Ana Maria, during the next coming months.
So let's think towards the future, which is very hard, I would say, right now, because we really don't, I think it's hard to grasp how effective the Mexican government and the business community and the state government, and I would just say civil society, will be in this recuperation process and rebuilding Acapulco. It's just hard to figure out, although I think many of us are very worried about the capacity of the Mexican government to play an important role in the long-term rebuilding of Acapulco and the other municipalities affected by this hurricane. Do you have any sense what Acapulco is going to look like in, let's just say, not only next year, we could start with next year, but even in 2025, 2026, in the next couple of years?
Yeah. So what we raise in the report is that in order for really the reconstruction process to start and really take track and make this the fastest possible reconstruction efforts, there has to be a government that is dedicated, that is concentrated to not only facing the emergency that is happening as we speak, but clearly in the next coming months to bring together the private sector clearly with the government efforts to put the money where it needs to be. And we are worried about that, Ana Maria, because it is the last year of the AMLO administration. He is distracted, obviously, with the election. He wants to win the 2024 election no matter what. He is concentrated in finishing his infrastructure projects, and that's it. So the potential of his government of really keeping a very strong effort, continuous effort during the next year or so is going to be relatively limited. Many of the public servants that work with him, they are distracted as well with the election. So we are worried that Acapulco starts to be forgotten very soon in the sense of the effort that the government has to put in order to really reconstruct Acapulco. So yes, it's hard to say how Acapulco is going to look like in 2025, but certainly we think it's going to be, and unfortunately, it's going to be a very slow process of reconstruction. The private sector obviously knows the importance of the state. There's a lot at stake, but if the federal government doesn't put the money in the place, doesn't coordinate the effort, doesn't concentrate for many months in the future with all the force of the state, the state, I mean, the Mexican state, in order to bring the reconstruction efforts as soon as possible, this is going to take much more than a year, Ana Maria. And that's what we're worried about, that it's going to be a long process.
What's so frustrating, Carlos, is that even before Hurricane Otis had hit the coasts in Guerrero, I mean, there had been prior natural disasters, there had been prior hurricanes. In fact, there was a storm that had hit Acapulco just days before, and they already had declared a natural disaster. And they were requesting funding, or at least to make sure the presence of the armed forces, the National Guard, doing this is before Otis. I guess what's so frustrating is that knowing that Acapulco is such an important avenue for tourism, or it used to be for international tourism. They have really nothing has been done to improve the security situation in Acapulco for the last, I don't know, I would say the last 10 years. It just continued to deteriorate. And now we have this disaster hitting Acapulco. You would hope that they would use this disaster as an opportunity to really settle in and make sure that organized crime it doesn't continue to prevail in the city of Acapulco. I mean, before Acapulco had this, before Otis hit Acapulco, basically the U.S. government was recommending all Americans not to travel to Acapulco. Period. Not to fly in, not to travel. I mean, it was considered a very dangerous city. So I mean, just the last comments in regards to the security environment now and towards the future.
Yes. Unfortunately, Guerrero, the situation in security has deteriorated in the past years. As you know, the actual governor of the state of Guerrero is actually someone that was not prepared for the job. She is the son of a famous politician in the state, Felix Salgado Macedonio, who was unable to run as a candidate for electoral reasons. So he decided to put his daughter as a governor. So that speaks in itself of how difficult it is to really bring the security situation under control. You have a local government that clearly seems absolutely unresponsive and without major interest in resolving the issue. So yes, I would say that the federal government has an opportunity right now to, in a sense, not only in the reconstruction effort, to put more order into the city, and that could be achieved. But as I mentioned earlier, the problem, Ana Maria, is you have a federal government that doesn't seem to be taking this disaster as the most important disaster in Mexican history, probably only behind the 1985 Mexico City earthquake. Just the numbers that they put out this week on the rescue plan seem absolutely insufficient for a disaster of this magnitude. They are talking about 4 to 5 billion US dollars, but really it's not much more. A lot of that money is not fresh money. It's just to put a little bit of money into the pockets of the people. But the efforts really are more in the infrastructure side. How are you going to build or rebuild 300 hotels? How are you going to create new infrastructure and reconstruct the one that was destroyed? How are you going to rebuild 250,000 homes that were destroyed by the hurricane? How are you going to save 160,000 formal jobs? How are you going to provide money, direct money, to the 70% of the population that works in informality and was linked to tourism? That answers that we don't know. What the government has said so far doesn't attend and doesn't respond to this, and obviously including the security situation.
Carlos, I really appreciate you joining us. Carlos Ramirez from Integralia. Thank you. And we will be retweeting this report through our social media. And I know you have been doing the same, Carlos. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us here on Living in Mexico.
Thank you, Ana Maria. Take care.
And in fact, I call on all of you to read my column, my op-ed this week in El Financiero, because I talk about another aspect that I think we need to start looking at. Who's going to go to jail? Evelyn, Rosicela, Laura. I mean, there's 4 women who clearly had responsibility in assuring that people were at least advised, or that they had warnings that this hurricane was approaching, and they were not warned. The city of Acapulco was not warned about this upcoming hurricane. People were in bars and at hotels having parties at least 1 hour before the hurricane was hitting the city. So I call on you to read my op-ed piece this week in elfinanciero.com. Let's go to commercial break. I'm Ana Maria Salazar, and you're listening and watching Living in Mexico. Don't go away. I'll be right back.